All aboard! Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, football fans of all ages, I am Beast Mikey. You have now arrived at my train of thought. It's time to talk about Week 12 before we get to Turkey Day and all the meals and food and family and football and everything else that we're going to do on Thanksgiving. Let's not waste any more time. Let's get to business. Of course, we've got the Mike Tomlin special. It's not necessarily him. It's more or less about, the Steelers are playing a really bad team and they're going to play down to their competition. It happens every year, at least once, without fail, under Mike Tomlin. It happened again. And to be fair to the Steelers, they tried to avoid this fate. Despite Myles Garrett being in God mode in the first half, they tried to avoid this fate. They caused turnovers, 3 of them in the second half. But unfortunately for them, Jameis Winston would not be denied. He got down the field effectively and efficiently when he had to. The Browns defense got 4th and 1 stops because Pittsburgh was incredibly stubborn, and their stubbornness cost them dearly. It was a beautiful scene to see a snow game and the first of the 24 season, but unfortunately for Pittsburgh, it was not a beautiful game because they ended up fighting at the end of the game, at least George Pickens did, harder than they did to fight and catch the Hail Mary catch at the end. So Cleveland gets a statement win, I guess, on their season. They messed up their tank a little bit, but they beat a really good Steeler team. For Pittsburgh, yikes, it's not great. Their weekend would get worse because of what would happen at the end. I'm not going to spend too much time on this game up at MetLife between the Bucs and the Giants because, let's face it, what else is there to talk about than Daniel Jones getting released? And I could do that tomorrow with the power rankings. The Buccaneers absolutely destroyed what was left of the Giants. It was easy, it was effective, it was quick. And it was Baker Mayfield being a blocker, being a quarterback, being a runner with the disrespectful Tommy DeVito-esque celebration. Beautiful stuff there, though. I'm here for it. It was all in all a beating by Tampa Bay and a get-right game for the Bucs that they horribly needed. For the Giants, it's only a few weeks left in your season. It's only a few weeks left in your season. I'm going to do likewise with the Dolphins and Patriots because, let's face it, the narrative going into this game was that Hard Rock Stadium has been New England's International House of Doom. I call it IHOD. And in this case, this did not change. IHOD remains. And this time it was Drake May being introduced to it. This was a beating from the word go. Tua cooked. Johnny Smith has been a revelation for the Dolphins offense. Devon Achane has certainly become RB1 as time has gone on, and he's been very good. Jalen Waddle had a dominant day because New England said, Tyreek Hill, you will not beat us. So Miami said, bet. Jalen Waddle will do it, and Johnny Smith will do it. And on defense, Calais Campbell, Chop Robinson, and Zach Sealer will do it. This was another dominant performance by a Dolphins team that continues to get better and continues to improve. They will be tested. I will talk about it tomorrow. For New England, like the Giants, it's only a few weeks left in your season. Okay, this was weird. Houston, explain yourselves. Why? Why must you look like this? Why must you be you? Why must you look so terrible on defense with all the young talent you have on that unit? Even though you did lose Petrie, that's a devastating loss. And why in the world must you find a way to lose to Will Levis, who provided a meme? He gave you the pick 6. And yet you still lost. You were still outplayed because Levis had a very good day. Sans pick 6. CJ Stroud did not look great. And that's saying something because this probably still should have been a Texan win considering all the sacks they got in the first half. 7 of them. And somehow probably shouldn't be surprised. Houston's not really all that good. They just happen to be in the right division to be mediocre to fugazi in. Tennessee, you got a signature win, which is good to have. And for Houston, this is not great. You're going to get the 4 seed because the rest of your division sucks. But this is not great for those who don't believe you're a contender. We'll stay in the AFC South, and I will say this about the Colts. The good news is you were not bludgeoned like the rest of your division, sans Detroit. Like the Jaguars or the Titans, I should say. That's the good news. The bad news is you really weren't competitive in this game. This is because the Lions handled business and kind of did it in the way of, okay, let's arrive, destroy, and get out of here as soon as humanly possible because they had other business to attend to on Thursday. It's a respectable way to do things, where they could just go take care of some business, no one gets hurt, everybody gets rolling. Jahmyr Gibbs handled business and scored twice. David Montgomery got in the end zone. This was just a routine, run-of-the-mill, efficient, Lions dominant win. They will have other business on Thursday and a Thanksgiving curse that they have to lift. They're going to be able to do that, right? There's good news and bad news for the Vikings and the Bears, for that matter. For the Bears, there's good news. Caleb Williams looked pretty good. He looked efficient. This might have been his best game as a Bear, considering the circumstances, considering the opponent. It wasn't just a terrible team. It was a good Viking team. For the Vikings, the good news is that you won. For the Bears, the bad news is that you still didn't find a way to win, even with Caleb Williams' best. It was a terrible overtime period. Let's call it for what it was. And this is after getting an onside kick. This is after avoiding all the pitfalls and all the mishaps and another blocked field goal. My goodness. And they were able to get to OT, yet somehow not win or do anything productive in said overtime. For the Vikings, you did not lose, which is obviously the point of this for you, but it didn't look great. Still, a lot of Vikings wins haven't looked great this year. You're 9-2, which is saying something, and maybe the most surprising 9-2 in the league, but at least you are able to move forward with the W. That's the most important thing, Minnesota. Just try not to look so bad against mediocre to bad teams. So I think everyone kind of got what they needed out of this Panthers game with the Chiefs. Kansas City got the win, sure. Kansas City looked productive on offense, sure. They needed that. They needed to get it and so they could keep pace with all the other elites in the NFL and not get humiliated. Okay, that's fine. But for Carolina, I will say this. This felt like a win. You didn't get blown out, which was good. You also looked pretty good at times. Bryce Young handled business. That's impressive. And he looked probably none better than what he did on Sunday in Charlotte. Carolina's obviously nowhere near Kansas City in terms of weight class, but we knew this going in. It was just the fact that you didn't get killed, and that's a good thing. Progress was made by the Panthers, which I'm okay with. Kansas City, take your win and run. Nobody got hurt, which is a good thing because you also have a short week to deal with, and you're now 10-1. You still control your fate when it comes to getting the number one seed in the AFC, which is obviously going to be vital to keep your games at Arrowhead and make everyone come through you to dethrone the defending champions. So yeah, this Cowboys-Commanders game was completely insane. It didn't start that way. It sounded normal. It started like a routine defensive game that's going to be a ho-hum 1 o'clock game that gets buried. Maybe Washington wins and keeps their season rolling. Maybe Dallas wins and gets back on track. And then the fourth quarter happens, and it gets absolutely insane. From the Gavondre Turpin touchdown, where he takes somebody's ankles after fumbling the kickoff, where we get to the point of it's Dallas 27-20, and then we get the long score by Terry McLaurin that had no business happening, and it did happen. And then an extra point was missed for the second time of the day by the Commanders for a similar reason. A terrible snap, and then the kicker having to compensate, and he could not. It was absolutely nuts. And then to close it out, the onside kick to make sure that, this game is truly done, and it's a touchdown for the Cowboys to close this game out. Devastating loss for Washington, and what's been a horrible month, really since the Jaden Daniels injury. It's been a terrible month for the Commanders. For Dallas, you're back on track, which is good. Did you mess up your tank? Sure. But I think you needed that win, and I think you needed to continue to reassert your dominance against Washington. That's also probably a good thing for you guys. Let's get to these late games, and I think the Niners might be cooked. So, sure, San Francisco didn't have Trent Williams, or didn't have Nick Bosa, or didn't have Brock Purdy. Understood. But they looked kind of lifeless against a team that they have bullied for many years now in the Packers. And Green Bay savored all of it. They relished in it, took their time getting their revenge. It wasn't like quick, fast, in a hurry. No, they made sure that the Niners felt every bit of it, every piece of it. This was meant to be a bludgeoning, and it was carried out as such. Josh Jacobs physically bullied them. David McKinney took the ball from them. Another on his part. The defense got an actual pass rush for once for Green Bay, and the Niners really had no offense at all without Purdy to help kind of sort of control it. Green Bay gets another good win. They keep up with their ops in the Lions and the Vikings. They will see both of them on the road later on this season in games that will really absolutely help determine who wins the NFC North. For the Niners, the season might be done. And maybe this era of Niner dominance may go with it. Perhaps this is one of those instances where the team that needed to win got the W, and the team that needed to get a higher draft pick to get more high-end talent took the L. And it was a good thing. And that's a very good look. Good job by Denver to not crash the car, to not give the Raiders a reason to try to win this game. They just took care of their own business. They made less mistakes. They were just overall the more efficient team here. Bo Nix was solid, if nothing else. He wasn't spectacular. He didn't have to be. He was just generally solid. And I think that's pretty productive when Cortland Sutton can just make spectacular catches, because he does that. For Denver's defense, good work. You didn't do anything dumb. You took the ball away from Gardner Minshew and then eventually Aiden O'Connell, who is now going to be the QB because Minshew's out for the season. And the Raiders, though they were in it for a lot of this game, it really didn't feel like they had a real shot to actually win it because Denver didn't allow them to. Good job by the Broncos to keep up in the AFC playoff race. So the NFC West is absolutely insane, right? We've got a Niners team that is falling apart at the seams. We've got the Rams, who I will speak of later. But now we get to this game with the Cardinals and the Seahawks, where I expected a whole lot of offense. I didn't get a whole lot of offense. That's a little disappointing, I would say. What wasn't disappointing is that Seattle's defense handled business. What wasn't disappointing was that Jackson Smith-Njigba continues the ball out. What was disappointing was Kyler Murray's in him. My goodness, what was that? Kobe Bryant did not miss, and this is Kobe, C-O-B-Y. He did not miss when it came to taking advantage of that opportunity and then eventually scoring the touchdown that really flipped the game around and really turned it on its head. Great work on his part. Anyway, a good one for Seattle and a team that looked like they were about to go away. Geno Smith's red zone turnovers have got to stop, but other than that, good win for Seattle. They won this with defense. Mike McDonald handled business on this one as coach. And all of a sudden, the Seahawks' chances of winning the NFC West are alive and well. Good job by Seattle. For Arizona, you still got a shot to go handle business and go win this division and go do the first thing. But this was a pretty ugly loss to have en route to doing it. The last stop on Week's 12th Railway Path takes us to Los Angeles, and it's a double dip. We're going to start with one Bird team playing the NFC version of the LA team. And for the Bird team in question, it was a very good evening. It was a whole lot of Jalen Hurts and Saquon Barkley and A.J. Brown doing their thing. Devontae Smith didn't play. It was a very productive performance by the Eagles. And in the case of the Rams, it was good, but it was some mistakes. Just too many mistakes. From the Kyron Williams fumble to start the game to just generally not being able to protect Matt Stafford at all for some reason, allowing Brandon Graham to get home as much as he did, allowing the Eagles defenders in general to get home as much as they did, no bueno. And despite the Rams getting a lot of good calls in this game for pass interferences and various things like that, some of them were merited. It just never felt like they were going to win because they had no answer for Saquon Barkley whatsoever. Barkley decided, I'm going to just go Super Saiyan and I'm going to outrun everybody. 2 70-yard tutties for Saquon, 255 yards rushing for Saquon, 302 yards total for Saquon. Giants fans everywhere wondering why in the world are the Eagles on national television so much, so we have to see this over and over again. And the Eagles win a relatively comfortable game out in Los Angeles in front of a lot of Eagles fans for that matter. Good work for the Eagles, who are proving themselves not to be sus like last year. Good work. Although Brandon Graham, unfortunately, did get hurt, and he's out for the season. So that's a shame, considering he's been the leader of that defense for so many years. That is a shame. And the Eagles could possibly win a championship without him and for him. And now let's talk about a bird team that played in Los Angeles, but this time it was the AFC version of a bird team playing in LA, and it was the Horrible once again. And though it started well for the Chargers, it did not end well. It felt like after the first quarter and the Chargers got out to the early lead, that might have been the wake-up call for the Ravens, because they desperately needed this win to get back on track after losing to Pittsburgh like they did. They got a good performance by Lamar. They got a good performance by Derrick Henry. They got solid production from their receivers, and it was just an overall good day. The defense got in where they fit in. They weren't awesome, they weren't world beaters, but they weren't awful, which is what the defense has generally been, at least the pass defense anyway. This was an all-in-all good day for Baltimore, and a game that Baltimore had to have. For Herbert, it's a shame, because he actually played pretty well. He didn't get help from his receivers, namely Quentin Johnston, who I thought got over the whole dropsies thing. He did not get over the whole dropsies thing. He had 3 of them, and one of which was in the fourth quarter on a play where he would have gotten an easy 25, possibly 30 yards, considering how the situation had played out when it came to the blocking. This is not a great loss, but for the Chargers, it's not awful. They're still going to be okay. They still should have a decent shot at making the playoffs. Just don't charge her down the stretch. And with that, we reach the final stop of this train of thought. I overall went 8-5 in week 12, and my record is 117-63 through 12 weeks. Tomorrow, power rankings. I will finish up my tier theme list, and we're going to talk about all 32 teams as always. I am sure of this. There will be one team in zombie tier from last week at minimum that will get out and will be in the monkey's paw tier, and vice versa. At least one. That's kind of how this works. There may be a team that was entitled tier that will fall into playoff tier. Where will your team rank as we go into Thanksgiving weekend? 31 teams, you will find out tomorrow. For Jacksonville, you'll find out right now. You're going to be the first stop of my next train of thought.